Wisconsin Eye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wisi.org/donate or by texting WISI to 44321.
Representative Tom Michalski is the Republican incumbent candidate from Elm Grove, running in the 13th Assembly District. Tom Michalski, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for joining us for our candidate interviews. I want to start by asking you, what is your campaign's key message? Why are you running again for this office?
Why I'm running again, and the theme messages are two different things. I'm sure you know, you start something new, there's a huge learning curve, okay? And I would say that at least the first 3-4 months of it was all learning curve, staffing my office, getting up to speed. Now that hurdle is over, and I've been through the mill a couple times, I want to use what I've learned and actually have a positive impact. The messages that I'm receiving when I'm doing doors is people are concerned about crime creeping in from Milwaukee, and they're also concerned about taxes, which, at least in the Milwaukee area, are exploding. So that is the themes that are mostly what I'm hearing when I do doors.
So if you're reelected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
A bill that is a priority for me is one that I worked on this past year, AB 102. It is a passion of mine to help the vets, and this bill helps disabled vets by providing a tax credit for their property tax. We were able to get it through the assembly. I didn't move it forward. I didn't author it, but when I saw it was in, I jumped in with both feet. The author isn't running again, so I intend on bringing that forward when reelected.
So if you're reelected, you'll be coming back to the legislature during a biennial budget year. The state's projected to have more than $3 billion surplus. What would be your top 2 priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Top 2 priorities, oh my. The budget surplus comes in 2 areas. The surplus comes in actually 2 buckets. One bucket is one-time money left over from COVID. I would use that money, whatever we can, for capital improvement projects, one-time spends that reduce the long-term costs of government. The other money is continuing money rolling in. And that there's a number of projects to be done with it, but because it is a surplus and it is the people's money, I would be focused on cutting taxes in some way to help them with their spending. I mean, they're hurt with inflation, and that's why I like spending the one-time money on capital improvements, because that is long-term money. You spend it, you reduce it, but it also means inflation will have a less of an impact there.
So you mentioned taxes. What does a tax cut or a tax reform look like to you? What would be something that you would support specifically? Who gets a tax cut?
What would a tax reform? Well,
are you interested in doing broad tax reform, or are you interested in doing one-time tax cut?
No, I'm more, well, I'll, but I don't know exactly what you mean by a one-time tax cut, but reducing the tax rate that the people pay. We tried for it in the assembly to get it through for the middle class to reduce their overall rate, and because you can change things every biennium. I guess you could call that a one-time, but I would aim to do that again. Again, I have the veterans thing, and that would be a partial use of it. But the amount there is small relative to the billions of dollars surplus that we have.
K-12 education is a leading issue for many voters. What is your campaign's top priority for K-12 education?
Well, I have a history in education. I worked for Marquette University for 30 years. I'm on the board at WCTC. I am all in when it comes to education. I know that they are struggling, and I know that we can spend money in that area and improve it. I think last term I voted for the largest increase ever, if I'm not mistaken, on
So you'd be supportive of additional state funding for
I would be
public
supportive
education?
of that. But at the same time, I'm concerned about results. And if you look at some of the school districts in the Milwaukee area, the results aren't great. What are they getting for their money? I think the people in those districts, in Wauwatosa, where they suddenly discovered that they're several $1 million in debt when they thought they had a surplus, they really need to focus in on what are they getting for their money. I understand 40% of middle school students, I believe it is, are not proficient at grade level in reading and in math. And those are things that they need to improve. So it's a two-handed thing. Yes, I'm all for spending money where it's due, but you really have to start looking at results too. So
You mentioned your experience in higher education. What does Wisconsin's higher education system look like in the future from your perspective? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges. What should the legislature do?
If you look at the demographics, we are coming to a point where the number of graduating seniors is on a huge decline. And a business, any business, when they look at their clientele is diminishing, they need to right size it. All the 2-year schools, I say all, but there's probably some exceptions, but most of the 2-year schools were built during my time when I was in school, when the baby boomers were coming on, and it looked like kids were coming and the increases would never end. That time has passed. I know in Milwaukee, they're getting rid of their 2-year college. We're closing it. WCTC, Waukesha County Technical College, is taking most of those students, along with a good chunk of the instructors. Because I am on the board at WCTC, I see how much advantage there is to the technical college system. It is incredible the value that is there for the students and the parents and the businesses in the area because we are laser focused on the area, the needs of the businesses, the needs of the students. We have a program where high schoolers can start in their junior year working towards a certificate or a 2-year degree, and while they're going to high school. So they'll be in both institutions at the same time. And actually this past May, we graduated a class and they received their certificate or 2-year degree the week before they received their high school diploma. Now these are kids that are ready to go to work immediately. Some of these kids, I'm sure, were exhausted with school at their sophomore year, and they would have, some of them just check out because they can't imagine spending 6 more years in school 2 years of high school, 4 in college. They just see no end to it. But we motivated them, and they're now productive.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you address it?
The largest workforce development challenge is the decline in graduating seniors, because as a state we will be declining more and more, and without the workforce there, trained workforce there, the manufacturers and businesses will go to some place where there is trained workforce.
What can the legislature do about that challenge?
Well, what I just described, we can take advantage of accelerating the kids through school. WCTC, I know now, is looking at a 3-year bachelor's degree, and it is, I'm blanking on the name. It isn't a full bachelor's degree. It is focused on a career, specific career, so it doesn't have all the fine arts requirements and all of that. It is laser focused on certain careers.
Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
No, I really wouldn't. As I said, we're looking at a workforce problem right now. If you put further limits on it, it's going to make it even harder to get projects done. I can't support that at all.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this, and what do you think should be done about it?
Yeah, this is something that I wasn't aware about until just very, very recently, actually earlier today. So I'm not as familiar with it, but if people are being paid under the table, well, that's against the law, and that should be cracked down on. In terms of independent contractors, I know that there's a fair number of regulations controlling who can claim to be an independent contractor or not. So again, I don't feel confident answering this question directly, but I think there are some safeguards involved.
Sure.
But if it is strictly under the table, that's illegal and should be cracked down on.
Affordable housing is an issue in Wisconsin, affordable rental housing. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability, rent control or building more rentals?
Well, that'd be building more rentals. I mean, rent control hasn't worked anywhere that I'm aware of. It certainly hasn't worked in New York. It's going to reduce supply. This is a supply and demand issue, and it is partially produced by COVID too. It has accentuated it right now.
Do you think the legislature should have incentives for building additional rental housing? Or what should the legislature do?
Yeah, I'm not as sure what we can do in that area. I mean, I'm not entirely for. I think that this will work itself out in a little bit. Hopefully it will, mostly because, again, it's a supply and demand issue. And if rents are too high and you can build cheaply, I think the biggest nut to crack is in local zoning. And if we can do anything in that way to expedite it, that's where I would be doing it.
Transitioning to healthcare, medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
So the closures in western Wisconsin, to a big part, that is because of there's not enough people in the area to support it. Okay, so in situations like that, I wouldn't mind helping. If
increase the Medicaid reimbursement.
Well, I wouldn't. Is that even in our control? We're state.
Medicaid reimbursement, yes, that the legislature can do that. Are there other things you're thinking? Workforce more?
I would look at the rates right now to see if they're competitive. If they are, then I would be looking elsewhere. If they aren't competitive, they should be.
Should be raised. Mental health care is also a growing concern for Wisconsinites and concern for state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue, and how would you address mental health care?
Mental health care is an issue, and I think that was accentuated by COVID also in the younger population, but the result of the anti-police movements recently has impacted people, the law enforcement also, and they suffer severely with something akin to PTSD with what they see. I'm a volunteer firefighter. I work with police and EMTs, and I see both of them. I'm fortunately not an EMT. I see both of them suffering with the strains of what they see. I am all in support of helping them specifically, and also the younger kids.
Investment for.
Yeah.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the abortion issue?
The abortion issue is an emotional issue on both ends of the spectrum. And I did a survey of my district, and they seem to be in favor of what is essentially in the European countries, which is first trimester and exceptions for the health of the mother, rape and incest, because those are crimes, and I don't know any situation where we don't allow the victim of a crime some sort of redress. And that's what they were heavily in favor of, and that's what I voted in favor of, and I will continue to vote in that way.
Sure. Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Transportation is incredibly important, and it is. And funding of it is going to be bigger as electric vehicles take a greater percentage of it, because it's almost entirely funded by the gasoline tax and fuel oil tax. So we're going to have to address that in a global manner.
Are there any pressing needs in your district?
Pressing needs in our district is more local, actually, and that comes through property taxes and whatever property tax relief the Assembly can provide. I know that I voted for an increase in the shared revenue, and I would do more in that area. And it was aimed at essential services, which is fire, police, EMS, and roads. And I do know in both Elm Grove and Wauwatosa and Brookfield that they have been doing a lot of local road work, and I encourage that because that's an area that has been left too long.
The environment. PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
PFAS, yeah, that is, and I understand that the fire department is at least partially. In truth, no one knew about PFAS before, or very few people knew about it before and its ramifications, but it was in the firefighting foam, and I used it on a couple of fires, and so it is now out of our system. We don't use it anymore, but once it's in the ground, it's there. I know I'm on a well. Elm Grove is local wells. It doesn't have municipal water. So it impacts all of us, and I will follow the science. Wherever the science takes us, I will follow.
The legislature should help to should the legislature help to rectify PFAS contamination?
If the science says that we can do something, yes.
Mm-hmm. We are to our final two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
The difference between myself and my opponent is basically who we are. I have always been a problem solver. My entire career has been helping people solve their problems at Marquette University. I was IT. I would go into an office and they would explain their situation and I would propose solutions, and we worked together to come to a solution. Firefighting's a little bit different kind of problem, but I am doing the same thing at WCTC and here, whereas my opponent is very heartfelt and she has very good intentions, but I don't think that her approach to solving problems is the same as mine, and that is the biggest difference. I think she believes that government and funding and projects will solve all problems, and I do not. I think when you get the government involved, more often than not, you're looking for trouble. So I am willing to work with training, with education, to help people make good choices, and mental health, that again help them make good choices. But I think that's the primary difference in how we approach problems. Not that we think differently about whether the problem is there or not. It is how to solve it.
Sure. Final question for you. If you're reelected to the Assembly and you were given a magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all parties together, what would that issue be?
Well, in my first term, and I don't have the answer here, but I have slowly become aware of a problem that I consider to be a process problem, that there is a problem with how we process things in Madison and maybe around the state all in generally. And the two examples that come to my mind is I know that the elections, whatever committee it is that handles elections, I forget its name right now.
Election integrity? Is it on election integrity?
Yes. Well, maybe I'm not sure about that, but that one, they invited Wolf to the director of WEAC, Wisconsin Election Commission, to a meeting on several occasions, and she just didn't come. I am on the Colleges and Universities committee, and I had asked for their admissions policy. I worked 30 years at Marquette. I know it's a sensitive nature. I would have signed an NDA, but all I got was a heavily redacted version where you can look on my website. I posted it. It's outrageous, where there's just an occasional word here and there.
So you want to solve that problem of getting
There's
information?
something about the process that departments feel entitled to just blow off the legislature, who has the responsibility of oversight. And if we can't get the information, if we can't get the questions, how can we supply the oversight? I said at the beginning, I don't have the answer, the magic wand, but I know that is something I will be looking at, watching very closely to try to come to some kind of but have an epiphany of how to attack that. Because it seems to be more than just within the state. I mean, district attorneys feel empowered to not enforce certain laws. And certain school boards feel empowered to I'll talk about the school board that tried to get the CIA to call some school board member, not more board members, but school residents, terrorists. And so that is, where did we go where these agencies across the board are able to feel empowered to do that to the people?
Sounds like a magic wand that would be put to good use. Thank you, Tom Michalski of Elm Grove, Republican incumbent candidate for the 13th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Tom Michalski, thank you for talking with Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.